When I was growing up, my parents in the neighborhood, pretty much everybody's parents, made us stay outside all day. Of course, there weren't cell phones, and even the Atari 2600 was still a few years away. I'm old now. There were some parents in the neighborhood who wouldn't even let us in to get a drink of water. So you know what we did? The garden hose. We drank from the garden hose. Boy, that was not smart. Hoses left outside grow bacteria, especially Legionella. Oh, boy. Water from garden hoses contains lead, BPA, and phthalates, which the Plastic Coalition says have been linked to hormonal imbalance, cancer, sterility, lowered IQ, and behavioral problems in children and adults. No wonder. All that drinking from the garden hose. Oh, my gosh. You know, the best way to drink from the garden hose is don't. Not really good for you. A fire hose is a much bigger, stronger garden hose. The best way to drink from a fire hose? Don't. Don't even try it. The pressure is way too high. At best, you'd have to try and hold a cup or something into the edge of the stream, and the pressure from that hose would knock the cup and your hand clear off. If you had to, you probably couldn't even drink from a garden hose going full blast because the pressure is just too much. And even that garden hose was nowhere near full blast when we tried to drink from it as kids. We just turned it on a little bit. Krista Franklin writes in Call, "If you find your imagination cannot stop itself from churning out the scripts of the death machines, pull its plug. Dismantle it. Reprogram it. Dream daylight. Manufacture daylight. We are magicians. Make magic." Like Bruce Cockburn saying, kick the darkness till it bleeds daylight. Sometimes it can seem impossible to turn it all off. We hang on for dear life. But with practice, we can learn to let go for dear life. Being overwhelmed is one of the most horrible feelings there is. When I was a sophomore in high school, I began having intrusive thoughts. Do you know what those are? Thoughts you can't get rid of? And when they really hit in, boy, I had never even heard of anything being like this. What happened was I had a friend who was also involved at the college radio station with me, WXPL 91.3 FM, Fitchburg State College Radio, pray for waves. It was ingrained, sorry. And this person left school in the spring semester of my sophomore year, and no one would tell me where she went. Finally, I got my friend Craig to tell me where she was. And she had left school because she was having emotional problems. And she kept telling everybody that demons were trying to get her because they couldn't get Tony. And I was like, seriously? Demons? And people joked, of course, oh, Tony's too holy, of course. Of course not. And I laughed too. And then a couple of days later, all I could think about was demons were after me. And I knew it was irrational, and I knew it wasn't true, and I couldn't stop thinking about it. By the time I did stop thinking about it, I was depressed, and I ended up in bed for over 3 months. I was completely and utterly overwhelmed. I literally just couldn't. I thought my life was over. I didn't know what was happening to me. But it lifted, and I got on with things and went back to my life. And a few years later, it happened again. Now, by this time, I'd been introduced to counseling and medication and taking better care of myself and learning how to manage stress a little bit. And it wasn't so bad. I did not end up in bed for 3 months. I didn't stop working and going to school. Had a rough couple of weeks. Got it. It sounds much easier now than it was then. Hasn't really happened that bad since. I know what it's like to be so completely overwhelmed you literally can't. And I'm sure there's a lot of you who know that too. Some years later, my son, as a toddler and in the early elementary grades, had anxiety so bad, couldn't leave the car to enter a family function or play youth soccer. But I understood. And we got him help and a great child therapist. And by 3rd grade, he was okay. Every single one of us feels overwhelmed sometimes. Some of us feel overwhelmed more easily and more often than others due to our particular personality, our personal history, our personal neurological makeup, the level of stress in our lives. I appreciate the description from the reading this morning from Brene Brown. On a scale of 1 to 10, I'm feeling my emotions at 10, paying attention to them at 5, and understand them about 2. Boy, that resonated with me when I read that. Oh, there are lots of days still. Sometimes it feels exactly like that. Although I'd say understand them might be about 0.75, not even 2. John Kabat-Zinn writes about it this way. Overwhelm is the all too common feeling that our lives are somehow unfolding faster than the human nervous system and psyche are able to manage. And that is just one of the worst feelings I think I can experience. Overwhelm is horrible. It's like trying to drink from a fire hose. It's like you can't get a manageable mouthful of water because it's too strong. It's like that children's game, Hungry Hippos. Did you ever play that one? Where your little plastic hippo has to try and eat the 20 marbles running around. And it's impossible to keep track of the individual marbles. So at first you just slam the lever as hard as you can to grab whatever you can grab. And then, though, as the game slows down near its end, there's only a couple marbles left. And all of a sudden it's easier to time and actually try and get it, you know. Because once you get some level of control, it's easier to deal with. For some of us, just catching a ball someone throws to you is a hard enough feat. But when life throws 17 different balls at us at the same time, like which one do you even pay attention to try to catch? Life can overwhelm us in so many ways. There's too much water, too many marbles, too many balls to juggle. And as for juggling, just learning how to juggle 3 balls is a hard skill. Who can juggle? I can juggle. I learned. It's not that easy for a lot of people. So juggling itself is an amazing accomplishment. Really good professional jugglers can find 5 or 6 objects difficult. And the world record for juggling balls is only 11. It's easy to get overwhelmed. It's not you. Because I know sometimes I feel like I'm juggling way more than 11. But there are strategies for when we feel overwhelmed. The National Council for Mental Well-Being suggests the following, and these same recommendations came from so many different sources that I looked at. One is Take a deep breath and step away. How do you drink from a fire hose? Don't. Three deep breaths can change your physiology, your actual physical, emotional response. When we breathed with Maya today, did you feel more relaxed afterwards? It worked, didn't it? Yeah. And I'm not kidding when I say we need to remind each other more often to just breathe. It's not a cliche. It's an actual tool for being human and feeling stressed and anxious and overwhelmed. Breathe, turn off. Is the doom scrolling overwhelming you lately? Put it down, back away, take a breath. Your doing that is not going to make what's wrong any worse or your ability to fight back any less. It's okay. We need you to breathe. You can do it. Practice saying no. Go ahead. No. 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 There you go. Now the hard part. Let the no be as holy and as sacred as saying yes. When we say no, almost all of us don't do it just to be flip or snarky or because we don't want to help out or because we're not interested. Most of us, I think, say no because we have to. It's okay. There'll be other times when you can say yes. You have to allow yourself to say yes and no. Sometimes you need to push yourself a little bit to say yes when you want to say no. And sometimes you need to push yourself to say no when you want to say yes. It's a tricky thing, this human stuff. But we all have to find our place with it and realize we can both say no and yes more often when we need to. This one is going to seem so obvious and cliche that I need to ask you to not dismiss it before I tell you what it is. Be kind to yourself. Be considerate and compassionate and loving to yourself. Be as kind and caring to yourself as you try to be to other people. I tell people about this as a minister all the time. This is, in a sense, the core of universalism. Everyone's in. Grace and love are an opt-out proposition. You've got to take yourself out to be excluded. And I allow that for everybody. And you know who I don't allow that for sometimes? Me. Be kind to yourself. It's okay. You deserve love. You deserve to love you. You're awesome. It's okay. This is going to sound like a broken record from me. Ask for help. Asking for help is a sign of strength, not a sign of weakness. Strong people ask for help when they need it. Weak people never seem to need any help from anyone or anything at any time for any reason. You're under somebody who thinks they've got it all together, they can handle anything at any time. I wouldn't spend too much time with that person. Get help. If you can't ask anybody else, ask me. Write it down. What's overwhelming you, stressing you out? What are you feeling? What are your emotions? Just blurb it on a piece of paper. Scribble it in a dark black crayon if you have to. some years ago, I started practice writing it down. And what I did is I started making lists. I used to get so overwhelmed that I had a hard time doing anything. I bet you know the feeling. You're sitting on the sofa, and the buzzer has gone off in the dryer, and you really need to go get the clothes out and fold them and put them away. And an hour later, you're still on your phone, wondering how you're going to be able to do anything today. One, that's normal. Everybody does that. But two, write down what you got to do. It seems so silly, but this really helped me. Some years ago, I started doing this. If I really wanted to get the laundry done that day, I would write it down in the morning just to check it off the list. And I was much more likely to not sit on the couch and go get the stuff out of the dryer. It was very weird. A ministerial colleague recommended a book to me many years ago called Getting Things Done by David Allen. And if it sounds like one of those corporate self-help books to be a better manager, it is. And I really couldn't tell you anything else I read in that book except this. Make a to-do list. I make to-do lists constantly. I usually make one at the beginning of every day I'm working, for work and for personal life. And the thing I learned from this book is that once you make a to-do list, triage it. Go through it. List for everything. Put a little mark. Is it actionable? Is it something you can take action or do something about immediately? If the answer is no, it either gets trashed or moved to the it can wait list. If it is actionable, is it something I can do right now, like in 2 minutes? If it is, I do it. If not, I ask if it's something somebody else can do. Can I ask my wife to pick up something on the way home that I need from the store? Can I ask a committee at church to do something? If I can't delegate it, it goes on the wait list. And after all the things I can do right now are done, I go through the wait list and put a 1, 2, or 3 next to them, which are the most important things to try and work on next. Usually I get 1s done. Sometimes I get a 2 done. There are 3s that have been on my list since September. Worked for me. That's how I wrote it down. Some people journal. I learned about making lists. Worked for me. Dealing with your own life's ability to overwhelm you feels suffocating, like there's no air. And now, on top of this, is the dumpster fire of the would-be dictator and the white Christian nationalist fascist attempted administrative overthrow of the Constitution and democracy. Well, if I wasn't overwhelmed already, I really don't need that right now. Just like the overwhelm in our personal lives, we can acknowledge the feeling. It's okay to feel overwhelmed. In fact, right now, I would say if people aren't feeling overwhelmed about the political situation in our country, they are either incredibly emotionally adjusted or hyperbolically privileged, or both. Also, I think it's important right now, if you're feeling overwhelmed, you're not imagining things. You're not overreacting to the situation feeling overwhelmed. You're not catastrophizing. You are not making things worse than they are. The more history you know, the more political science you know, the more you are connected to traditionally marginalized communities, the more you are aware of what is happening around you in our country right now, the more you understand that history repeats itself and unfolds step by step, you recognize the historical and political patterns of democracy dying and fascism rising. It's not you. You've got it straight. And it's terrifying. and it's overwhelming. It doesn't get to win without my permission. I'm going to breathe as much as I have to. Let's remind each other, amid all of this, that the overwhelming is a political tactic. The barrage of the unjust things that are happening is designed to overwhelm the opposition. It may seem like you're not fighting back when you stop and breathe, but not letting yourself be overwhelmed is a direct counteroffensive. It starts, everything we do can start right there. Whatever action we take, whatever effect we have, whatever hope we generate, it's going to start by stepping back and unplugging, getting a little centered. When we're overwhelmed, our nervous system, and therefore our brains, can't think well or plan well or strategize well. Trying to overwhelm us is a tactic. It's being done on purpose. What's the best way to drink from a fire hose? Don't. Do not. Get yourself off the fire hose. And when we're off the fire hose, we've backed away. We're not running away from the problem. We're getting ourselves ready. Part of that getting ready and taking care of ourselves is grieving. Because we're going through a lot of loss right now as communities and as individuals. The Constitution, democratic norms, public service, the safety marginalized communities have built, imperfect as it has been. What we've known is dead and dying. It's okay to be sad. It's okay to grieve. The promise of the social contract we once knew most likely will be gone. It's not the end of things. I know it's hard to believe right now, but it is not. We get to say when the end of things is. I ain't finished yet. I'm not done. I know that grief I have is a manifestation of love. There can only be great pain where there is great love, said Martin Luther King. There's only great pain where there's great love. There is only great loss where there is great love. It is that love causing our grief that is going to power us to victory. Because we're putting love at the center, and they put hate at the center. And hate can't defeat hate. Only love can do that. In their book, Let This Radicalize You, Kelly Hayes and Mariam Kaba say, we can turn away from injustice and let it continue, or we can confront our grief and move forward to shift the course of societal action in the face of a massive failure of leadership and institutional abandonment. And they're right. We have the ability to hold us up, to save us, to make something new and better than even what was. This is going to be rough. But grief and hope can coexist. They must coexist. The Democrats are not going to save us. The courts are not going to save us. We are going to save us, together with all the other we's who love and not hate. Grief gives birth to hope. Hope powers love. Love wins. The forces arrayed against us are counting on enough people to obey, remain silent, and be intimidated by hate that they give up. I am not giving up. I'm going to win with love. I know how to organize. I know how to create community with each of us helping to get what other people need as best we can. The authors of that book also write, That opposition is wholly unprepared to confront a multiracial, intergenerational movement of people who share a loving practice of grief and who are prepared to care for one another and act in one another's defense. They're not expecting us. We've got the element of surprise. They have no idea that what we're going to do is possible because they don't know love. And we do. That's why we win. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Parts of this are not going to be fun. But we got each other and we got this. See, that's the thing about evil. It always overestimates its own power. What brought down the mighty dark Lord of the Rings? A little tiny hobbit about this big. Who's overfond of drink and eating and taking leisurely walks in the woods. Kicked its butt. We have at the core of our congregation a mission that helps us respond in a way the Project 2025ers and the MAGAs and the Christian nationalists are completely unprepared for. For our mission is not something that ministers like me harp on for no reason. Lived mission, mission put into practice, is not a collection of platitudes or blank aspirations. Loving community is not just a slogan. When practiced, it is a place of intervulnerability, solidarity, and strength. When we're overwhelmed and it's too much, we tap out, somebody jumps in, we go take a rest. When they're ready to tap out, we come back. We got each other and we got this because we've got loving community, not hateful community. There can be no such thing as hateful community. Think about it. Social contact is a tool. Hanging out with each other, doing things together for fun. Did I mention there's an auction and a dinner on March 15th? Is a way we win. Get help, talk to others, hang out, make friends, go have fun. You're not abandoning the cause if you take time to go have fun. Because you can't have love without joy. And we've got to keep the joy up to keep the love up to win. And we can do that. Spiritual growth is not some new age terminology that is empty. Spirituality is, among other things we'll find out in a minute in our conversation, is breathing, practicing being aware of the love. It's exercising the heart muscle and the hope muscle. We're going to talk about what we mean by spiritual, what we need to do more of on Sundays and at other times to keep us fed in that way, to work the heart and hope muscle. Advancing justice is not just a blank rallying cry to feel good about ourselves that we're doing something. It's the hard work of step by step by step, getting our hands dirty, washing clothes, getting Sahit News groceries, making mistakes, having successes, forming partnerships, creating the society we want to live in. Not just saving what was, because quite honestly, what has been up to this point, I'm not so sure so much of it is even worth keeping. I want equity and justice and inclusion and kindness and love. If we're going to start building, we build that. Not just save what was, build something that we actually really want. We can do this. The radical poet Diane de Prima says, "The war that matters is the war against imagination. All other wars are subsumed in it." When we're overwhelmed, it becomes difficult to imagine a reality other than being overwhelmed. When we're grieving, it becomes hard to imagine a world without the pain of the loss. When facing hatred and violence and evil, it becomes heroic just to imagine a world of love and peace and compassion. But I know you're heroes and can do it. Right now, it might seem insurmountable or inevitable that we're not going to win. But winning or losing with stuff like this is a choice. I reject the inevitability of totalitarianism. No, not on my watch. Absolutely not. Hazel Henderson writes, if we can recognize that change and uncertainty are basic principles, we can greet the future and the transformation we are undergoing with the understanding that we do not know enough about the future to be pessimistic about it. It's easy to get trapped there. We're doomed. We'll never make it. Nonsense. As Frodo told Gandalf, even the wise cannot see all ends. I like to quote scripture in my sermons. All is not lost. I believe in our collective ability to survive and thrive. I believe in our collective ability to defeat hate with love. I believe a better world is on the other side of this present crisis. We can think of these times as the end of the world, or we can think of them as the difficult process of the birthing of a new world with love at the center.